Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to dive into something pretty wild today. How the Pope, the spiritual leader for millions of people, also became a king. Like a real king with land and army and enough power to make emperors, well, nervous. So let's just ask the big question right up front. How on earth does the leader of a church get his own country and his own army? I mean, it's a huge question, right? And the answer, well, it's this incredible story where the lines between faith and politics get really, really blurry. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to break down two kinds of power. First, there's spiritual power. That's what you'd expect, right? Authority over souls, faith, that kind of thing. But then there's temporal power. And that's all about earthly stuff. We're talking land, laws, armies, taxes. And our story today, it's all about what happens when those two very different types of power crash into each other. All right, so let's get into the proof. How did the popes justify this leap from spiritual leader to actual ruler? Well, for centuries, their entire claim to being kings was built on one single incredible document. They held it up as the ultimate proof, the smoking gun that said they had the right to rule. And this document had a name, the Donation of Constantine. Now, the story it told was amazing. It claimed that, way back in the 4th century, the first Christian emperor, Constantine the Great, got leprosy. The Pope supposedly cured him, and Constantine was so grateful that he basically just handed over the keys to the Western Roman Empire. And you have to understand the scale of this supposed gift. I mean, we're not talking about a nice villa or a little plot of land here. The document claimed Constantine gave the Pope the city of Rome, all of Italy, and pretty much the entire western half of the Roman Empire. It's just a mind-bogglingly huge claim. But here's the twist. To figure out where the Pope's power really came from, we've got to put that document on the shelf for a minute. Let's rewind the clock to the 8th century, which for Italy was a pretty chaotic time. Okay, so picture this. The Byzantine Empire, think of them as the Eastern Roman Empire, is losing control over Italy. That creates this huge power vacuum. And jumping right into that vacuum is this group called the Lombards, and they've got their eyes set on conquering Rome. The Pope is in a jam. Who's going to protect him? So Pope Stephen II does something nobody expected. He looks north over the Alps for a new ally. He reaches out to the king of the Franks, a guy named Pippin the Short. And Pippin says yes. He marches his army down into Italy, beats back the Lombards, and then, and this is the game-changing moment, he takes the land he just conquered and gives it to the Pope. This deal, known as the Donation of Pippin, is the actual birth certificate of the Papal States. So you see what's happening here? You've got two completely different stories going on at the same time. On one hand, you have this kind of mythical story, the Donation of Constantine, claiming this ancient, enormous inheritance. And on the other hand, you have the real deal, the Donation of Pepin, a practical political treaty that creates a real kingdom for the Pope right there in central Italy. And this is what it meant to be a Pope king. All of a sudden, the Pope isn't just talking about faith anymore. He's collecting taxes. He's running his own court system. He has an army to defend his new kingdom. And maybe most importantly, he now has the power to anoint kings, which gives him incredible influence over every monarch in Europe. Now, you can probably guess what happens next, right? When the Pope becomes a king, you're setting the stage for a massive conflict. It becomes this epic struggle between the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor over who's really in charge. It was like a battle of two swords, the spiritual and the earthly. This whole power struggle got a name, the investiture controversy. And really, it all boiled down to one question that would dominate politics for centuries. Who's the real boss? Is it the Pope, who has the power to crown the emperor? Or is it the emperor, who has the army to protect the Pope? It's a classic chicken and egg problem, but with crowns and armies. And boy, did this come to a head. In 1077, we get one of the most unbelievable scenes in all of history. The Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV decides to challenge Pope Gregory VII. So the Pope pulls out his ultimate weapon, not an army, but a spiritual one. He excommunicates the emperor, kicks him out of the church, and just like that, Henry's power completely collapses. His nobles abandon him, he's forced to travel across the Alps in the middle of winter and stand barefoot in the snow for 3 days, begging the Pope to forgive him. I mean, can you imagine? That's power. Okay, so for hundreds of years, everyone just kind of accepted the Donation of Constantine as fact. It was the legal bedrock of the Pope's kingdom. But then came the Renaissance, a time when people started questioning everything. And one scholar decided to take a much, much closer look at this foundational document. The year is 1440. The Renaissance is lighting up Europe, and with it comes this new powerful idea. Let's not just accept things, let's investigate them. So this scholar, a guy named Lorenzo Valla, he brings a new tool to the table. It's called philology, which is just a fancy word for studying the history of language. He wasn't just reading what the donation said, he was looking at how it said it, breaking down the Latin word by word. And what he found was a bombshell. The text was full of words and phrases that, well, they didn't exist in the 4th century when Constantine was around. The analogy here is perfect. It was exactly like finding the word internet in a letter from the Civil War. It's just impossible. A total giveaway.
So Valla proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the whole thing was a fake. It wasn't written in the 4th century at all. It was written around 750 AD. And what else was happening right then? Exactly. The Pope was making his deal with Pepin and the Franks. So you see, the forgery wasn't some ancient relic. It was likely created right at that moment to give this brand new political power an old, holy-looking backstory.
So, this kingdom, built on a real treaty with the Franks and propped up by a very convenient forgery, what happened to it? Well, its legacy would stretch for more than 1,000 years, shaping the map of Europe in the process.
Think about it. The Papal States lasted for over 1,100 years. For centuries, popes weren't just religious figures. They were Italian princes who led armies, made treaties, and fought wars. This all continued right up until 1870. That's when the modern country of Italy was being born, and their troops captured Rome, finally ending the Pope's time as a king. All that's left of that massive kingdom today is the tiny, independent state of Vatican City.
And that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. On the one hand, gaining all this earthly power probably saved the papacy from being wiped out, and it made the church a huge political player for a millennium. But it also dragged the church into endless wars, political schemes, and power grabs. So it makes you wonder, right? When a spiritual leader gets the power of a king, what do they gain? And more importantly, what might they lose along the way?